So we're going to start a new series of videos entitled Hop Questions. I'm really keen to hear from you what questions you might have about Hop and the new view, learning teams, and any of the other things that we do in this space. One of the questions that comes up fairly frequently is, well, can you do learning teams without doing the new view? And the answer is, well, in many respects it depends. But it's worth spending a moment just thinking about what is it we're trying to do, what is it we're trying to achieve with learning teams. Well, here's something to consider. Learning teams are just one way of doing operational learning. There are lots of other methods you could use, there are lots of different ways you could incorporate operational learning into your organization. So what are we trying to achieve with operational learning? We mentioned here, operational learning is about understanding the work from the perspective of the worker. And it's a big shift from operator compliance, i.e., are you doing the right thing, or what we could believe to be the right thing, to where is it difficult to get things done? Where are the challenges in your work, and how can we potentially A, understand those challenges, and B, help make them better? So that's what we're trying to achieve with learning teams. Get the deeper understanding and stories of people's work and their experience of work. Now, is that a really easy thing to do? Well, in theory, yes. But there probably are a series of prerequisites, things that need to be in place in order for this to be done effectively and successfully. So what are the prerequisites for learning teams? Firstly, for a learning team to be successful, the organization has to be okay with, aware of the fact that there is always going to be this difference between work as imagined and work as done. Now, if your organization is really comfortable with that, yeah, we know there's this kind of imagined world over here, how work gets done, and then there's actually how work is done in the field, the fact that safety is made and broke every day by people doing the work, not necessarily just by the safety work. If you're okay with that, and your people know you're okay with that, and they feel they can talk about work as done, the blue line stories, and explain that there are times when the rules don't work and procedures can't be followed as written and so on, if you already have that, great, there's a prerequisite already met. The fact that you have this comfort with work as imagined versus work as done. Not many organizations that I first start working with are super comfortable with that concept. They might know it's the reality, but it doesn't mean there's necessarily organizational acceptance of that reality yet. Second prerequisite, and this is also really important. I was talking to a person on a course just recently, and their organization insists on a 5 whys being done on every event. Well, 5 whys, root cause analysis, well, sure, that's better than 1 who, but not that much better. 5 whys is very much entrenched in a very linear, mechanistic thinking. Events aren't caused by a single root cause, which we can just get to with a simple 5 whys. Events, or failures, much the same as success, is complex. It's messy. There are lots of different contributing factors, lots of things that are going on in the background. It's a messy story of work that generally leads to success, but sometimes leads to failure. And it's that we need to uncover. So if your organization is currently in a place where they say, what's the one root cause? What's the one thing that we can do to make sure this never happens again? Well, that's very much a sign that you're very much still married to linear thinking and the fact that there are simple root causes out there for what oftentimes are complex issues. Finally, how well does your organization respond to bad news? What do you mean by bad news? Well, events, rule breaking, behaviors that are considered to be wrong or unacceptable or unsafe, at-risk behaviors. If that kind of information gets brought forward, and generally the response is poor, you could say your learning teams are going to be lacking in psychological safety. Now, I don't really use that term very often. I certainly don't use that in a learning team setting. But what we're getting at is if people don't feel safe, if they feel this is going to be bad news and this is not going to be welcome, they're not going to share information that we really need to get to in a learning team. So these 3 things are real important prerequisites. If you have all 3 of those things already, that's great. Go for gold, start doing learning teams. You probably already are well on your way to doing the new view in any case, if you already have these traits. If you don't, that's when I say it's really important to build some foundations first. Do the groundwork, prepare the soil. But otherwise you can potentially do more damage than good by starting learning teams if these things aren't already in place. If you don't have these things in place, well, the principles of HOP, having an organizational approach where you're working to understand and integrate these principles into your business, that creates the conditions for success with learning teams. Building an appreciation that people make mistakes, whether that's errors, which are unintentional, or rule breaking, or violations, if you want to use that word. These things all happen for a reason. And blaming, so blame fixes nothing, doesn't help us get to those reasons. We need to understand, get the deeper story. We understand that context drives behavior. The world is messy, and it's that messy world that we want to try and understand. Learning is critical. There is always going to be a difference between work as imagined versus work as done. And learning teams is the only means to tapping into that, but the conditions need to be right for us to do that. And that requires us to manage our response appropriately. So HOP is a really useful vehicle for driving organizational change, both around safety, but around other things in operations too, around long-term cultural shifts, around how we treat our people, how we treat each other. But also, it puts the conditions in place to be able to learn more effectively. So, can you do learning teams without the new view? Well, it depends. If you have those prerequisites in place, great. If you don't, well, maybe you need to start thinking about HOP or the new view in your organization.